This is F.D. Recovery, where we interview addicts and alcoholics.
Our aim is that through this podcast, we might help you on your journey of recovery.
Thank you for listening. Hello, this is Frank, and you are listening to F.D. Recovery. And this is the portion of the podcast that's called Weekly Intention. So basically, we go week to week. We pick topics and our spiritual principles, and we work them in our recovery. We talk about them and then work them in our recovery, do recaps, and so on and so forth. So this week is going to be routine. All right. But before we get into that, we're going to recap last week's on how last week's spiritual principle that I worked in my recovery, which was simplicity. So the one thing that I realized with simplicity is there's not much to it, right? It's kind of just back to the basics. I found myself just rooting myself into reality, right? And sticking to the facts. I kind of strayed away from imagination, at least as far as storytelling. Not as far as creation. You need your imagination big time when you're creating, right? But I'm talking about the stories I tell to people and to myself, the narrative, the kind of the game, the showmanship that we kind of do towards each other and to ourselves to kind of feed the ego in a sense. So I found myself dialing it down, and I'll tell you what, it went a lot smoother, right? Especially during Thanksgiving. Because Thanksgiving can be pretty crazy for a lot of us. We can get in our heads. We can get around family, get lonely in a room full of people, right? And, just because you're in recovery and you're sober doesn't mean that everything's going to go smooth and gravy as you pass the gravy at Thanksgiving. You still got family ties that could be a little rocky. You could still be, fixing those relationships and or reconnecting with your sober self, right? And so as you are connecting with your sober self, so is your family. So we got to give ourselves a little bit of grace period, and that's where the simplicity comes into play. And that's where it came into play for me, right? Thankfully, I was, I wasn't around my family. Wouldn't say thankfully, that's not the right word. Fortunately, I wasn't around my family and their chaos that they can bring sometimes and what it creates in me, but I was around another family, which is my wife's family, which technically is my family now. But that was a cool experience. My first Thanksgiving, technically with some of them second, but it was just a cool experience. We got to watch football, hung out, took some days off, and that was nice. Hung out with my family, back to the basics, right? Kept it real simple. Did things real simply. Went to my Friday meeting, which was good, and skipped Project Heart because it was Thanksgiving, of course, but all in all, it was a pretty successful Thanksgiving, and I hope your guys' Thanksgiving went well. If it didn't, I'm sorry. There'll be another one. Hang in there, right? I did a funny little video this morning, and if you're taking yourself a little too serious, get the fuck over yourself, right? And that's one thing and it was all self-talk, right? the self-talk I try to do today is all rooted in humor, and because that's a real practice of mine. I tend to take myself a little too serious, and I'll tell you what, if you're living simply, you're not taking yourself serious, right? You're not buying into those stories. And that was a beautiful thing for me, simplicity. When you get back to the basics, it's just very simple, plus minus, basic math, basic stuff, and in the whole ingredients of it. You're not trying to repaint the rainbow, right? You're just going to keep it as it is, use the colors that are provided, and don't try to reinvent the wheel. Popping off with all the ones today. So, you know, if you guys are out there and you use simplicity in your recovery, um, it was an awesome trip for me, and I hope it was for you, right? So use simplicity in your life from here on out. That's a beautiful thing about the spiritual principles. You could interchange them, and they're all connected in one way or another, right? So I'm going to keep it simple and move on from simplicity. So let's dive into routine. Let's see. Routine. All right. Routine meaning. Let's see what almighty Google has to say. All right. Routine. A sequence of actions regularly followed and fixed program. Oh, sorry. I read that all out of see. A sequence of action regularly followed. A fixed program. Two separate things right there. Performed as a part or regular procedure rather than for a special reason. Organized according to a routine. All right, we looked up the regular. Now let's look at what it means in recovery. All right, the meaning in recovery. Let's see what we can dig in, guys. And then we'll start talking about what it means to me, right? In recovery, a routine is a structured and habitual daily schedule that provides stability, accountability, and a sense of purpose, which helps reduce the risk of relapse by managing cravings, combating withdrawal syndromes, and keeping idle time to a minimum. It involves consistently incorporating healthy habits and activities into a person's into a person's day to build confidence and a foundation for long-term sobriety. How routines help in recovery. Provides stability and predictability. A routine offers a sense of security and control, especially during a period of significant life challenge or change, helping individuals manage the challenges of withdrawal and cravings, combat boredom and idle time. By keeping a person busy with productivity and healthy activities, routines can fill the time that might otherwise be spent dwelling on thoughts and desires that could lead to a relapse. Fostering accountability and discipline. Following a structured schedule builds self-discipline and accountability, which can extend to other areas of life, empowering individuals to take control of their lives. I like that. Support physical and mental well-being. A routine can incorporate crucial activities like consistent sleep schedules, exercise, healthy meals, and self-care, which are vital for physical and mental health during recovery. Improve cognitive function. A consistent schedule can improve cognitive function and help with managing symptoms like irritability. I know that one. Anxiety. Yep, that's my friend. And depression that are common during withdrawal, right? So, let's read this last one and we'll dive into it. Create a barrier to triggers. All right. By planning out the day, individuals can productively avoid people and situations that are not conducive to their recovery, creating a protective barrier against common triggers. That's a good one. All right. So some of us aren't in that withdrawal scenario, but some of us are, right? And if you're in that withdrawal stage of your recovery, I hope that um, you get through it and then you hit your meetings and call your sponsor if you have one. If you don't have one, find one quick. Um, but I wanted to talk about routine because it's so important, right? I used to, how do I say? I used to hate routines. I used to hate the same thing. I liked everything to be sporadic and kind of all over the place. But the one thing that I did like to have is my ritual of getting high, getting drunk, all that, right? And there was a specific way I like to do it. There was a specific kind of rhythm I did with it, right? Activities I did with the getting high. And the perversions that came with it, the psychoticness that came with it, the violence that came with it, it was all kind of a pretty little package that was all chaos, organized chaos, right? And there was a sense of thrill to it. There was a sense of made me feel alive. But I realized, trying to be clean and sober, because I've had many failed attempts. It wasn't just like I got one and done. And oh, yeah, it took me 5 rehabs and many other stops along the way to get where I am today, which is 7 years and some months, right? But during that journey and this process of recovery this time around, I realized how pertinent and important routine is. I mean, you want a good future. Well, look at your habits, right? You're looking at your daily activities. You're looking at your where is your physical body every single day? What are you planning? Where is it putting you? These are the important questions you need to ask yourself, right? Is it putting me in harm's way, and or could I be making better choices, right? Can I be building better habits, right? My habits always led me to the dope house, led me around bad people, led me to the liquor store, led me to the casinos, led me to the, trap houses, all the places I didn't belong, right? I did belong there because I wanted to get high. So that was a phase in my life that kind of, I had my routines down, right? As chaotic as it was, the main priority was to get high, but there's a lot of unknown that comes with it as well, right? So I think it's just kind of when we talk about this routine thing, right? I think sometimes people get into this mentality of just repeat, but that's not really what routines are. It is in a sense of like, you're doing the same things a lot of the time, but it's not just to just repeat, it's to build, right? One thing that I've learned in my physical well-being and moving weight in the gym and picking heavy shit up and putting it back down, right? Doing that repeat stuff. It's about putting the reps in, right? And seeing how much stronger you can get, how much healthier you can get, and how much more you can move, and getting down to where you're connecting to your body and respecting your body, right? Because I never did that in the past. So I started building these routines that were actually going to provide me some longevity and actually provide me something that I really wanted in the future. I want to look 5 years down the road and know that I took care of myself now and did those things for myself now, as opposed to what I used to do, right? I used to just kind of be hitting every kind of angle of bad, right? Every kind of, not taking care of myself, no health program, no, just whatever I put in my body, drugs, alcohol, bad food. There was no, there was no true routine. And I mean, there was a routine of bad, and that was the thing I was like, okay, I need to make a change, right? So I started looking at the small things when I got into rehab. And back in 2018, I I was starting to listen to this stuff that was getting told to me, and I started paying close attention to those things that they told me: make my bed, hygiene, start with the simple stuff. So I started just taking suggestion, and eventually, over time, I'm not going to say, oh, I made my bed and I stayed sober for 7 years. No, but don't discount the small steps that you need to take and the monotonous things. It's just not the reps for just repeat sake. It's reps just so you can get stronger. Right? You can get stronger because what you repeat, you're going to end up being stronger at. I promise you. All the bad things that I've accumulated in this life and all the nervous tics and all those things that I felt a lot of shame about, all the behaviors I felt a lot of shame about, those were all practiced. Those weren't just this, those just didn't, they were practiced and they were taught to me, right? I learned those things. I just didn't there's nothing, I'm a firm believer there's nothing as an original thought, right? And there's nothing as original behavior. I mean, most of my crap don't get me wrong, we can get into the realm of where we're unique and we do unique stuff and, we find talents that are special to us and we utilize those. Well, what I'm talking about is there's nothing new under the sun as far as the crap that I was doing out there. And I was just regurgitating stuff for the most part that I kind of learned from the first jackass that I seen, right? So it's just like, well, I see my parents do it or I see my friends do it and I'm just trying to fit in. And eventually that became my personality. I was just like a mockingbird. It wasn't never like, I know I want to see who Frank is, get to the core of it and, get down to the nitty gritty. And then I'm going to behave how I want to express myself truly in this life. It was never that, right? It was always just, how am I going to fit in? Man, I'm nervous. I need alcohol. I need drugs just to feel something other than out of place like I usually felt. And, I know that I'm kind of rambling, but I think this fits into routine because if the routine is a choice, right? You're choosing to, create a new habit every single day, and you're choosing kind of your stepping stones to your end goal, right? So when you choose a routine, when you choose something and you're choosing to act on it every single day to kind of make it a routine, what you're doing is there's an outcome that you want from that behavior. So when you start exhibiting some of these behaviors behind the routine, it's going to push you towards an outcome. So I urge you, if you're trying to build a routine, whether it be working out, whether it be health, and wellness, whether it be your mental health, physical health, eating better, whatever, moving better, yoga, it's all, it doesn't matter even if it's nothing to do with the body and you're just trying to fix your mind and you think you just need therapy, it's always going to take some effort. You can't just go in one therapy session and go, oh, they didn't fix me, I must be really fucked up, or oh, it doesn't work, right? I want to see you go to 40 therapy sessions, once a week, right? And by the time you're done, you've already completed 40 weeks, almost a year, about 12 weeks shy from a year or whatever the heck it is. And then you might be able to, and you gave it an honest effort, 52 weeks. Let's do every single week for a year, right? You're not going to, and I'll tell you what, if you're actually really doing it and you're going in there and you're handling business and you're facing these demons and you're getting shit done, you're not going to be at the end of the year and go, yeah, this is bullshit. It's not working. No, it's not. I don't believe it. And if you don't do anything from a year and if you're doing it for a year, then you're doing it for a core card. And at the end of the year, you write it out as BS. I mean, I don't know, then you're a special kind of stupid because that's the crap I used to do, right? So I was that special type of stupid. I did that 52-week batter treatment and learned nothing, right? Still violent, still angry, all that, Right. So I know it can be done. What I'm saying is if you do it with an honest effort, honest heart, and do it from an actual place of where you're actually giving it a real effort, I don't think at that end of that journey you're going to be like, "Yep, it's a waste of time. I'm going to do something else." I don't believe it. You're not going to convince me because when I did my first year of recovery and I actually did it, by the end of that, there was no turning back for me, right? And I know there's always a yet, so I got to stay on my game, because they say it's doing push-ups in the parking lot. And I heard that a million times. I thought that was so fucking stupid, but it gets funnier the deeper I get into recovery. I'm like, it's true, right? I just heard some tragic news of a little girl, that's a local, and thank God she survived, but she OD'd, fentanyl. They brought her back and all that stuff, but I just think, man, I literally watched that girl grow up. Like I've been at the same job for 7 years. I've seen her at my work for 7 years, and she just turned 18, and it breaks my heart. Now I know I'm disclosing a little information, so sorry if you're out there and you hear, but it just breaks my heart on what we see in the life of addiction, and what we put our parents through, what I put my parents through. It's just kind of wild to watch. When you're on this end and you see some of these behaviors and you see people struggling, you're like, wow, man, I put my parents through a lot, right? And getting back to the whole routine thing, routine and choice. I know I veered off a little bit right there, but I would get back to my initial point is choice. When you choose something, you make up your mind, right? So your mind's made up. So what does that do? It cuts out all the other pathways, right? When there's a choice to be made, you cut out all the other options, at least whatever you're choosing, and then you go with it, right? That frees up bandwidth, right? So when you create many routines in your mornings, whether it be a spiritual routine, health routine, and you start filling those time blocks, you start realizing you build a life that you're like, holy shit. By the time you know it, you've got everything filled up with really fruitful stuff and really just kick ass shit where you're like, man, I ain't got time to worry about doing drugs. I ain't got time to worry about some stupid crap, right? And that's the beautiful thing about routine. It helps you with direction and puts you on the path of where you can win. And I know some of you drug addicts out there, just like me, you hit that brick wall and you were fucking tired of losing. I was so tired of losing. I was fed up. I was just looking at myself in this whole scenario, shooting up, going, man, I'm gonna die to this. And I gave up, and I was just so tired of losing. But in that moment, a sliver opened up, a sliver of light through the desperation. It pushed me on this path that only God can put me on. God put me here, and not to get too prolific or whatever, if it wasn't for the grace of God, I would not be here, because it took a special kind of divine intervention to crack this egg yolk, because there was just no talking to me. I had my blinders on, my eyes were closed, and I was going 100 down the freeway with the lights off in the dark, right? And there was no way out but death or prison, right? And somehow, through an act of God, I was able to see some sort of light, and gave me this desperate feeling of actually wanting to change. And it brought me to the rooms of NA and AA. And before that, it brought me to rehab, but that's where it introduced me to NA and AA. That's at least my first introduction really to NA and AA. So please, guys, I cannot urge you enough. Build a routine this week. Work on routine. If you don't have you do have a routine. You just got to see what that is, right? And see what it's really pushing you towards, right? Your routine's already there. You just gotta you gotta change it. You gotta build a new routine if it's not getting you the results that you want. If you're not sober or you're living a shitty life, I hate to say it, you're trying to fuck your best friend's girl or whatever you're on, right? You got to change your fucking habits. You got to change people, places, things, change your habits, change your daily routines, your daily rituals, and get yourself back on track. There's no reason that you can't do it. If I can do it, and I was a complete 100% dirtbag, I have rap sheet long to prove it, right? I've got crime after crime. I have broken relationship after broken relationship. I have ex-girlfriends that can show you how and tell you how much of a piece of shit I am. I have a laundry list of things that I could revert back to. But that's not the point, right? What I'm trying to get across is if you think you're so far down the road, you can get where you can build a wonderful life that is worth living. You can come back from that darkness. And, it takes routine. It takes this routine of recovery. It takes getting to your daily meetings. It takes the daily reprieve of connecting with your God, connecting with NA literature, AA literature, connecting with your sponsor. That has to be a part of your routine. Getting back in the good connection and grace of your God, right? Your higher power is essential in this. So I'm going to do a little bit of simplicity on here and finish up with this and just walk with me on this journey of recovery. I love you guys and work on routines this week. All right. Love you. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to FD Recovery. A reminder, be kind to yourself on this journey of recovery. Also, call your sponsor. Get connected to local support groups. And for one day at a time, stay clean and sober.